Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
It's Brown Sports Bag, back here on 104 The Score on this fine Monday afternoon. I hope everyone has enjoyed their weekends and their Christmas parades, and they've gotten all that out, and now they can just get to Christmas, which will be fantastic, I am sure. I'm a big fan of Christmas in some ways and not in other ways, John. I mean, when my children were young, you know, and you get to see the delight on their faces in the mornings when they get things that they'd like to get, but then you get the bills after Christmas and you're like, good Lord, why do we spend all this money? And it never really changes in a lot of ways, but hey, the upside of Christmas is that usually there are some basketball tournaments and that kind of stuff going on that we can get to go to. Not so many in this area this year, so usually there are, but not so many this year. And this is the week that leads up to the Christmas break for the high schools and for all the students, and I'm sure that they enjoy getting out for it. Did you kind of, when you got ready for the this break, you guys usually played in quite a few tournaments, either pre or post Christmas. What were some of the things that you guys would learn, and what were you excited about with those particular types of tournaments?
Well, I only played. I made a decision early coaching that I was only going to play in one.
Yeah,
either before or after, and as things went on, we always chose before.
Yeah,
and then just give them a break. I always thought it was good to kind of get their batteries recharged, and if you play immediately after Christmas, oftentimes, and you're really practicing up to Christmas, so it's really not a break. So I always like just doing a pre-Christmas one. Now, oftentimes it depends on your expectations and how good you are.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a really, really good team, there are a lot of tournaments this time of year that can really challenge you. Mm-hmm. And we went to the Lexington Catholic tournament when we were really good.
Right.
That was probably the premier tournament in the state. You faced several top 10 teams up there, and that's. But I guess the beauty of it now is there's depending on your level, depending on how good you are, there's tournaments that kind of fit everybody.
Oh yeah.
There's tournaments that are, that certain teams don't need to go to because there's too many good teams there, and then you have some medium ones, and there's some other tournaments that are teams, quite frankly, who struggled in the past. So
probably good fundraisers for the schools that are hosting tournaments.
True, and and you get 3 games in, and or sometimes 4, in a short amount of time against teams you don't always see, and if you stay all night, sometimes it's going to be a bonding experience. So, it's this is. I always thought it was a kind of a neat time, to be honest with you, because once you come back from Christmas, and especially January, then it becomes a real grind at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's basically 2 months of just constant basketball.
That's
after
correct.
That break. And Barron County and Glasgow kind of a unique circumstance through the years because a lot of times they will play, talking about that post-Christmas tournament, a lot of times they'll play late December on the 30th, somewhere in there, or early January. So, I mean, a lot of times that turnaround, if you played a post-Christmas tournament, was pretty tight before you had to play that district game, and it's a big game for everybody. I mean, everybody's in town who goes to those 2 schools through the years, so you get a lot more people at that game.
Yeah, it's
a
big draw.
A lot of times. Yeah, it's a big draw.
It's probably your biggest game of the year for either school.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a pretty interesting – that game is pretty interesting, and it's probably kind of shaped how you put together your schedule a lot of times, too, with those Christmas tournaments, I would imagine.
You're right. That's another reason why I didn't want to play post-Christmas, because you're playing right up until that date.
Yeah.
And I would always prefer to give them a little time off and then practice like 3 times before you played.
Right. Well, real quick, we're gonna talk about the boys basketball that we've seen over the last week, and talk about some of the games coming up this week. And we'll start with Barron County. They played Monroe County on Friday night, and they won by 10. And honestly, I thought they were going to beat Monroe by more than that. They were up pretty handily. I think they were up 16 or 17 in the third quarter, and Monroe made a rally, got it as close as 7, and ended up, Barron pulled away and won by 10. I think a couple of things. Brooks is back from Monroe. That probably made a difference.
First game back.
Yep, first game back. And then I think Rich is a pretty good basketball player from Monroe if people haven't seen him play.
Very good shooter.
But Barron
much bigger.
Yeah, much bigger. Got good speed and whatnot, and they've been shooting the ball fairly well, except Well, actually, they didn't shoot the ball badly from outside against Hopkinsville. They struggled with turnovers on Saturday when they turned around and hosted Hopkinsville at the Berrien County Classic, I think is what it's called. Number of games Saturday at Berrien County High School. But anyway, they kind of struggled with the pressure that Hopkinsville is married. I mean, they will play that full court press, period. I mean, that's what they were doing. They did not change anything. They were trying to generate everything off that. So kind of mixed results in those two games, I think, for Berrien County. Maybe the good win, being able to hold on and put away Monroe late in that game, and maybe kind of a loss that they can learn from with Hopkinsville with the turnovers and trying to overcome that.
Yeah, I think, with Berrien, I think just sum up the first 2 weeks, they're 2-2.
Yeah.
And I would – defensively, they have played really well.
Yeah.
I think Warren has to be pleased with defensively. They did a nice job against even against Hoptown, to be perfectly honest with you. Defensively, they weren't that bad. Monroe, they were really good. South Warren's got a really good offensive team. And I think defensively, and for the most part, they've done a good job on the boards. Still the question mark with Berrien is their outside shooting, and it's been streaky at best.
Yeah,
I think sometimes shot selection too has been a problem that I think that Warren is trying to get his kids to figure out.
Yeah.
When to take a shot. Not everybody's a three-point shooter, and sometimes players have to understand what they're good at and what they're not good at.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that at times. It's not selfish play. It's just trying to get people to figure out. And that's one of the keys for teams is players have to understand their roles, and they have to understand what they're good at and what they're not good at. And everybody wants to be a three-point shooter, and everybody's not. And what's a good shot for somebody may not be a good shot for somebody else.
Yeah.
And oftentimes kids, and to be honest with you, parents don't understand that at times.
Yeah.
I think that's been a problem that they're trying to figure out. Their depth has been impressive at times, and it's good and it's a curse too, because when you have 10 kids trying to play 32 minutes, it's good in case you get in foul trouble. It's good if you're trying to wear down an opponent. It's bad in the sense that if everybody's the same, it's kind of hard to figure out who gets minutes and who doesn't, and it's hard to get into a rhythm sometimes. But I think Jacob Shaw has been a very positive addition. He's an energy guy. He makes good plays for the most part. He's shot the ball pretty well overall. I think he has been a really, really nice addition to the team. And I think they're still trying to find themselves. And it's going to take a while, even though they have experienced players coming back. But when you're trying to play 9 or 10, sometimes getting into that routine is not easy. They have struggled at times handling the ball, especially against Hoptown. But Hoptown's going to force a lot of people into turnovers.
Yeah, they weren't just athletic; they were also long.
That's correct, and they were committed. Yeah, they're committed to the press.
You don't see many teams that committed to playing that style of basketball.
That's correct. You don't see that often, and they did give Berrien trouble, but they hung in there. And Berrien, give them credit, Berrien. And the problem sometimes that Berrien faces is they go through these terrible quarters. They went through 2 last night where they score like 3 points or 4 points. They had that problem last year.
Yeah, the first quarter was pretty rough on them against Hopkins.
Yeah, and when you don't score, number one, it's depressing as a team. It kind of takes your life out of you, to be perfectly honest with you. And they go through a lot of those shooting slumps where they can't put the ball in a basket. To their credit, last night they had a fabulous second quarter, and they finished strong. They had a chance to tie it last night after it looked like they were down 7 or 8 with a minute and a half to go. Yeah, and they had a shot near the end to tie it. So they continued to battle, and that's always a positive. And it's no disgrace to lose to Hoptown. But they're going to be busy this week. Now they got some very winnable games. They have at Evanston tomorrow, but Evanston is not bad, and that's a hard place to play at Evanston. Yeah. And then they have the old school game when they they play Caverna at Park City on Tuesday, and then they'll be busy again this week. Allen County Friday. Yeah, I mean it's a busy week. Yeah, I mean it's from Friday to Friday. It's a bookend week with 2 district games that they really need to win both.
I would say.
In 5 games.
In 5 games. And so that's going to be a fatigue factor, especially after the Hopkinsville game, because Hopkinsville, like you said, I mean, they were committed to that. They made Barron run a lot.
Yeah.
And I will say this about the first couple of weeks of the season. I think Will Bandy has gotten off to a fantastic start.
He's shooting the ball really well.
Yeah.
He's had a little trouble at times with foul trouble.
Yeah.
And but he's I think Tate Pointer is Barron's best 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
He had 3 against Hoptown, and every time he shoots it, to me, it looks like it's going in.
Oh, yeah.
It's got perfect form.
Yep.
But Will's also a really good shooter, and he made a big 3 against Hoptown on Saturday that got the game within, that
it was a spark.
It sure was. And he's also, when he's in balance and takes good shots, he's a really, really good shooter. Well, Barron honored the 1,000-point scores, and he's one of them.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, but you mentioned this week, I think the Caverna game will be interesting in this sense. I've seen Caverna twice. It just so happens to be the 2 games that they've won. And they Drew Rhodes, you want to talk about a shooter, he shoots a shot that looks like it might hit the rafters, but it goes in. But their problem is they have a big kid in the middle, Jax Dunnigan, but their guards are really small.
Yeah.
I mean, they're quick, but they're just not very big at all. But I will say this about watching Caverna a couple of times. They run some pretty good stuff offensively. I think their guard size is their biggest problem a lot of times. And it'll be an interesting matchup.
They got a district win Friday against Greene County.
Yeah, it was a big win. Drew Rhodes caught fire. He had a couple of threes that got him ahead in that game, and then they were able to finish it off at the foul line. But they needed that win because they had lost a couple of district games to LaRue and Hart in the middle of that, I believe. Definitely lost that game to Hart. So, that's going to be an interesting game. Going to be interesting to see a game played at Park City. Yep. That's going to be fascinating. I referred to it as the home of Van Vance. I don't know what other people know it for.
Van Vance, University of Louisville, play-by-play for years. Yeah, Park City, I believe I heard Jay Turner say this, that it would be the first varsity basketball game played there since 1974.
Yeah, before the year that the schools consolidated, right? But they did not have a gym yet at the high school.
That's correct. So it's been a while. No, it should be neat. It's going to be interesting. It's how many. They expect the place to be packed, and sometimes when everybody thinks it's going to be full, people don't go.
Well,
but it's not going to seat 1,500, something like that, 1,400.
Yeah.
So it should be a neat environment, and I'm sure the kids get a lot out of that. When you put 1,400 people in a gym that seats 10,000, it looks like nobody's there.
Right.
1,400 in a gym that says 1,400. That changes the atmosphere.
Yeah, it does. It makes things a lot more intense. You can hear both Monday night's game and Tuesday night's game on 103.7 Nash Icon and online on 104thescore/Barron County. You can, if you want to listen to it online. Meanwhile, the Glasgow Scotties, they had a rough couple of days. The first 2 games after Tucker Kirkpatrick went down, rough defensively. They gave up 85 to Greenwood and lost that one by 15. Gave up 83 in overtime to Campbellsville, lost that one by 2. So they turned around on Tuesday night. They were the only game in town on Tuesday night, as a matter of fact. And they were playing Bowling Green, and you kind of going in, you're thinking they might give up 100 to Bowling Green, the way they've been giving up points to these other teams. They actually played very good defense against Bowling Green, and there was a different, I think, kind of attitude about the team. Maybe they had time to get in a couple of practices without Tucker, like real practices, and really focus on what they were going to do. And one of the things that Coach Willett said was on that Monday, they basically had a defense-only practice. He said it was a spirited practice, and it showed up. And I think it showed up again on out of that game. It showed up offensively in a way too, because they pounded the ball inside the Jaden Franklin. Bowling Green couldn't stop him. He had a fantastic game against Bowling
points.
Green. Yeah, so it seems like
just to recap, they lost, but it was competitive, 6-point game.
Yeah, 64-60 was the final.
4-point game, 64-60, and against Bowling Green, arguably the second best team in the region.
Right.
And with what Glasgow has gone through a little bit, that was a very encouraging effort for them. And I think it actually set them up for their victory
on Friday.
That's correct.
Yeah, beat Russell County 51-49, which Russell County earlier in the week had beaten Greenwood.
That's correct.
And as is the case a lot of times with Russell County, we don't get a chance to see them. They show up, and we're like, who are these guys? And they're just better than you expect them to be, and maybe that's the case again this year. But, yeah, they held Russell County to 49 points. They did a grind-out win. And, you know, the thing about that team is I think they have 7 seniors, and this is what Willett said after the Bowling Green game. Those guys know how to win. You know, they just probably had to get over the shock of the circumstance they were in.
Yeah. And they should be, you know, it's a little part of their struggles defensively has been A, schedule. We've had a good schedule. Yeah. B, losing Kirkpatrick has hurt them a little bit, but they should be a good defensive team. I mean, they're big and long and have quickness at the guard position.
Right.
So they shouldn't be giving up 80-something points to very many people.
Right.
They're just going to have to, with Kirkpatrick out, they got to figure out a way that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And they've got an extremely – it's like I said it last week on the air. I feel bad for Coach Willett in the sense that he configured his schedule thinking that he was going to have all of his horses there to play, especially early in the year, to toughen them up by the end of the season.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating when you toughen your schedule up and you don't have all your horses.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to that point you're pointing out here, I mean, they play Warren Central tonight. That's considered the best team in the 4th region. I don't know if you saw them Saturday. They absolutely destroyed Henderson County.
18 threes, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just – I mean, everybody they put on the floor was shooting the lights out.
Yeah. They could win the state with that performance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man, they're legit top 10 in the state. You could probably put them in the top 5, especially if they play that way.
Yeah. So that's who Glasgow gets tonight. So it's another tough test for them. And then – talking about preseason tournaments on Friday and Saturday, they play at Pleasure Ridge Park.
Play Manual.
Yep, play Manual on Friday.
And DeSales the next day.
Yeah, I think DeSales beat Trinity earlier.
They had.
Or last week.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and those are going to be 2 of the teams that are got to be considered the better teams in the Louisville area this year.
There's a lot of them in Louisville.
There are a lot of them in Louisville. Take your pick in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, those are going to be 2 tough ones. So, I mean, it's kind of a murderer's row of games for them, as you said, because of the expectations of the team in general. And, you know, maybe it still pans out no matter what the circumstance is with Tucker Kirkpatrick, and I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a minute. That this experience does help them down the road even still, because they still have enough good players to be competitive. It will be interesting to see.
Well, they're not going to cancel the season. So
correct.
So you might as well take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah.
And good players, and they got good players.
Uh-huh.
They got several, but I guarantee you, Nick Sorrell, Jaden Franklin, if you're a really good player, you want to play against good competition.
Yeah.
You want to see where you stand. And playing the Bowling Greens, Warren Central, going to Louisville and playing Louisville, quote-unquote, competition.
Yeah.
That has to be exciting for you.
Yep. Well, and real quick, back to Franklin. He was very impressive against Bowling Green. I mean, you know, we didn't get to see him play last year because of the injury during football season. We saw the end of his sophomore year, and we could see what the potential was. I mean, he's there. I mean, he's absolutely – I mean, he's almost unstoppable on the block. But real quick, back to the Tucker Kirkpatrick. I talked to his dad, Steve, you know, and talked to him about Tucker's situation. They're doing physical therapy. It was a partial tear, and so they think that they can do physical therapy and try to just build the overall strength and flexibility. And hopefully sometime in January, maybe even it's early February, I'm not sure, they can really get him back on the floor. I think this week they were going to start working on lateral movement and that kind of stuff,
which is the biggest issue when your ACL's tore. It's the side to side movement.
Right. Yeah. So I mean that we could see Tucker back. I hope we do.
Yep.
You know, and
that'd be great for him.
Yeah, it would be great. You know, it'd be great for the Scotties, but really it'd be great for him to be able to finish out his senior year the way he would want to, which is on the floor instead of watching the game.
That's right.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, the Barron County Trojanettes also had a pretty busy week this past week. They played district game against Monroe County on Friday night. Won that pretty handily over the Lady Falcons, a team that I think is young and still trying to find its way. I mean, we're used to Monroe County being one of the better teams in the region in girls basketball, but they are still trying to rebuild. They've got some nice-looking young players, and I'm sure they'll be back at some point because they're never down for long. But meanwhile, the Trojanettes are just better right now. But then they turned around on Saturday and faced Elizabethtown and got an education in what a small college basketball program looks like.
Yeah, E-Town is big across the line.
They are indeed,
but they're not wide big. They're athletic big, and I think you can make the argument E-Town's 1, 2, or 3 in a state.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But with Barron, they are. Piper, I'm very proud of her because she's a former player of mine.
Yeah,
and she has done some things that's not easy to do in coaching, and that is change styles and change it while a winning style to a different style. Because our first couple years here, for the most part, they were kind of a pack line defense. They would never extend past very good rebound teams. They're very, very conservative defensively.
Yeah.
And midway through last year, she really started extending the defense and went through that diamond press, which I thought really helped them. Well, this year, I mean, they have really, against Monroe. I thought they were tremendous against Monroe, and they've run that diamond press pretty much against everybody right now. And what it's enabled them to do is create a lot of easy baskets. Elizabeth Bertram is really it's opened the game up for her and among others.
Yeah.
And Piper is it's forced her to play 8 or 9 kids right now, and I think she's this. I knew they was going to be good anyway because they had the 2 good guards back,
right?
And Bertram and Murphy. Even though Murphy was just an 8th grader, but she's a good guard.
Yeah.
So I knew they was going to be good. But this style of play has really fit them well. And I said this 2 years ago, too. If I was ever going to come back and coach in girls, I would press everybody.
Yeah.
Because there's just not enough quality guards that are out there. People just don't have them anymore.
Right.
For whatever reason. And there's a lot of reasons in my mind why, but it's just a fact. There's just not a lot of teams that have guards. And I would press everybody, and she's instituted this press. And Barron is not – they don't have 6-foot players, but they've got enough length out there that they can throw out in the first at the start of this press. And Barron is a solid number 2 team, in my opinion, in the region.
Yeah.
And they're close to Bowling Green. Now, Bowling Green's knocked them off, but they're close. And even though E-Town ended up beating them 19, and it wasn't that competitive, what everybody's told me, because E-Town took it like a 28-9 lead or whatever.
Yeah.
But Barron didn't quit. They kept playing. I think she had 26 points, and Carly Delk had like 12. But Barron kept playing, and there's nobody in this region as good as E-Town.
No.
In fact, it's not close.
No, it's
E-Town
not.
is a totally different level of play. And I give Piper credit. She didn't have to play them.
Right.
She invited them down, and it'll help them. It'll help a young team that has a lot of young players and guards when you face that level of competition. It's one of those good losses because you stepped outside your comfort zone and played an elite team. But I think it's a game that down the road will really help them.
Yeah, to your point, I think one of the things about that game, you talk about that early lead that Elizabethtown got on Barron. Barron's not seen anything like that because even though Bowling Green will apply pressure, they're not that big.
They're not long like that. Yeah.
And some of their big kids are big kids.
Right.
Elizabethtown, I mean, they have a guard who I think was 6'1", and
is that the Hay girl?
Yeah, no, actually, I believe her name is Clark.
Okay.
And she number 14. I mean, she was just long, and then 33 that's 2 players that I didn't know about coming into the game. They were comparatively the same size. Hay didn't have to do a whole lot in the game because just everybody was all the same size, basically.
Yep.
And that's why I jokingly referred to it as a small college basketball team because that's kind of what you see a lot of times.
Yep. Well, they're bigger than some – to be honest with you, they're bigger than some of the NAIA schools.
Oh, yeah. But what I thought was interesting was once Barron kind of got over the shock of that early blitz and dealing with that size.
They were competitive.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of their game against Mail last year. Once they adjusted to that, and maybe that's talking about Piper scheduling. That's the thing. I mean, I think that's what got them in that game last year in the state tournament is just the early open of that game. Mail was just different physically than anybody they had seen all year.
Yeah. E-Town will be the best team that they'll play all year.
Yeah.
Unless they win the region and they face a team of E-Town's caliber.
Right.
But there's not three teams in the state of Kentucky that are that caliber. Maybe five.
Yeah.
That's the elite of the elite.
Yeah, E-Town was coming off a 9-point win over Mercy the night before.
Right.
Which is usually one of the better girls basketball programs around.
That runs up and down the floor 32 minutes at a time. Yeah.
So going back to your point, though, they got over that initial shock. They started running their offense. They started getting some looks that they wanted. They, some of those shots got blocked inside that other people won't block.
Well, and Burcham had 6 threes.
Yes, she had 6 threes.
She's has improved her 3-point shooting. A couple years ago, she was a reluctant 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
And this year, she's playing with a freedom. It just looks like to me. I mean, she's on go, and that's what you want her to do. To be perfectly honest with you, they need her scoring, and she's played really well.
Well, and I think that loss to Elizabethtown may be woe unto other people who get to face them this week.
I do. I really think right now, in my mind, I think they have moved themselves up in a really solid position.
Yeah.
They're going to be hard to handle at the end of the year.
Yeah, because, they face Edmonson County tonight. And what I mean is woe unto those people who face them this week is that they had to learn to play at an intensity level in that game, and that includes people like Macy Lockhart, the freshman, and Liberty Rice, who is kind of a utility player for them. So a lot of the bench players or that haven't been in these situations necessarily before in this role – in that E-Town game, they had to learn how to play at a different level.
Yeah,
and they actually did. I thought
they did, and they need to play teams like that because, no offense to the schedule this week, but Edmonson's not bad, but they're not anywhere near the level that we've been talking about. They have Edmondson, Caverna, and Allen, and those are 3 teams that Barron. I think Barron's pressure will give all 3 teams fits.
Yeah, none of them are bad necessarily, but none of them are anything like facing Elizabethtown. And meanwhile, so that's a good week. A critical game at the end of the week against Allen County, I think, would be pretty interesting. Allen is
they're rebuilding. They're rebuilding big time. They lost 2 kids that scored 90% of their points last year in rebounding. They've complete rebounding. And now they've done a good job. They've been competitive.
That's what I was going to say. They've actually been better in their games than I expected.
They have been. They've been competitive, but again, it kind of goes to the fact that I don't know how deep the region is either.
Yeah, right. So that's it. Also, the girls' game tomorrow night is at Park City as well. Tuesday night.
Tuesday, and that's right. And tonight it's at Edmondson. Girls play Edmondson.
Yep. Meanwhile, the Glasgow Lady Scotties, they lost to Russell County on Friday night, 51-46.
Russell County may be the biggest surprise in the region.
Well,
they're undefeated, 5-0, I believe.
Yeah, I told Glasgow played a dare Saturday. I talked to Justin a little bit, and I saw Julie Balt was the leading scorer for Russell County, and I was like, I remember that girl. I do not remember her being a scorer in the least.
Right.
And apparently she's transformed herself into an offensive weapon. She was a fine guard, but I just don't remember her really offensively at all last year.
Yeah, well, Russell County struggled last year.
Yeah, they did.
They really did struggle. And, of course, they lost their coach, Coach Pippin, good coach, who's now at Glasgow. And, of course, they won the region 2 years ago.
Right.
But they've lost almost every kid that was on that team. It's graduated for the most part. They played any minutes at all.
Yeah.
So their start this year has been surprising to me, and it's not an easy place to play at Russell County.
I had somebody comment about that to me on Twitter.
It's a beautiful gym.
Yeah.
Beautiful gym. It's loud. The people get into it. But it's not an easy place to play. There's been good teams go up there and lose, but it is one of the top gyms in our region to play at.
Is that right?
Yes, chairback seats. The acoustics is loud, good.
Yeah.
I just always thought it was a clean place. I've been always impressed up there.
So Glasgow lost that game. They turned around on Saturday. They beat Adair handily, and shot the threes extremely well in that game. I think they hit 6 or 7. Got threes from Nina McMurtry, Mia Cassidy. They got threes from several other people. They
needed that because they've been struggling.
They did.
They've been massively struggling shooting the ball.
Yeah, because they didn't hit the shots against Russell County the night before when they needed them, really.
And Greenwood.
And
yes. South Warren.
Yep.
I mean, they have not shot the ball very well, even from the free throw line.
Yeah.
And, Justin told us in here he thought they were going to be a much better shooting team.
Yeah.
And they've not so far been that type of team. So maybe that's, sometimes when you play, Adair has struggled, to say the least. But sometimes you can gain confidence if the right people perform in games in which you should win.
Yeah.
And those right people are players that that you need confidence to make threes.
Yeah.
So from McMurtry and some of the others making threes, regardless of who they play, that sometimes can carry over because they're just going to have a hard time all year beating those top teams without loosening the defense up enough for Gore to have room to score inside and things like that. And they just have got to get enough shooting.
Yeah, because she's proving to be as unstoppable inside as we suspected she would be. I mean, she's if you give her an inch, she's probably going to make that, and a lot of times draw a foul.
Yeah, well, she's a 4-year starter, and she's been through the ringer. So with her, it's room to operate and staying out of foul trouble. And at times, Glasgow has struggled sometimes with some sloppy turnovers. I know Justin was not happy with their performance against South Warren.
Yeah.
Got sloppy with the ball a little bit. And even Russell County, they made some turnovers that hurt them down the stretch. So the win against Adair County was something they needed. They have Warren Central tonight. Now, it's a team they should be, but Warren Central has played better this year too. They've put up more points this year than they've put almost total the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know that Joe Hood over the summer thought that when they went through their summer workouts and whatnot and their play during the summer, he thought potentially they would be better this year because of a couple of reasons. One is he had young players, and they were finally maybe catching on.
Yeah, and keeping them helps too.
Keeping them, absolutely.
They've had a problem with that too.
Yeah, they've had a couple that have gone elsewhere. So, I mean, that's one of those teams that I'm not surprised they're doing better this year. Or at least being more competitive. I mean, they were struggling just to compete the last couple of years. And Franklin Simpson kind of falls in that category real quick as well. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Through the first couple of weeks of the season on the girls' side, are things kind of panning out the way you expected them to? I mean, outside of Russell County.
Russell County?
Yeah.
I thought Bowling Green going into the year would be the top team.
Yeah.
Just with the amount of people they have back.
Yeah.
I thought Barron would be second or third. I know they lost everybody, but I just know from past experience there's a carryover when you win a region.
Yeah.
Confidence is big, and they've got arguably the best player in the region, Elizabeth Bertram.
Yeah.
I knew how good Murphy is, and I just thought there was going to – anytime you got good guards, you're going to be really good.
Yeah.
I thought Glasgow was going to be in the top 3 or 4 just because of I respect Justin. He's a master at designing game plans and so forth. My question mark with them is outside shooting. It still is.
Yeah.
But he can keep games close just from his coaching ability and so forth. The question is, can they knock off the top teams? Do they have enough shooting to knock off those teams? That's my question mark with them. And that's kind of, I think it's Bowling Green Barron. I think Glasgow and Logan you can kind of put in that 3 or 4 mark or whatever. And outside of that, it's
Russell County.
It's
it's a toss-up somewhere.
It's kind of a toss-up somewhere. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody else is, to be honest with you, a real threat.
Yeah.
Outside of injuries, you never know.
Right.
Bowling Green's already lost 1.
Yeah, that's a good point. Going back to that confidence building from the Adair County game, if McMurtry and I think it's Camden Short, who actually came in and hit I think a couple of threes as well against Adair. If they do have the confidence and they can take those shots and they make the defense be honest, here's one thing I have noticed, that when in the Glasgow games, the opposing defense, they stick to Nina McMurtry pretty tight.
Yeah.
They know she's a shooter.
Right.
So that means somebody else has got to be able to hit at least one to make the defense honest.
Right.
Because going back to what you said, I mean, it's not just opening up the inside. It's also everybody knows McMurtry is the primary shooter.
Right.
And Paige can shoot three sometimes.
I've seen her make them against Barron.
Yeah. I mean, I think she hit, 6 in a game or something like that. I mean, it's
right.
ridiculous. But anyway, yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I've only seen Bowling Green the one time, and that's when the guard got hurt. So we'll see how that pans out for them. I also wanted to say this. I got to see Caverna in their game against Greene County. They ended up losing that game, but actually they played pretty well overall against Greene County. I think Greene is a pretty good team.
Kind of wore them down.
They did wear them down. Here's one thing I'll say. Cornelius Faulkner runs some good stuff. He just he's got a couple of younger players that are still struggling to kind of figure out how to score and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I think they're going to be okay over the long term, but I would go back. He said that they, with Gamboa and Burnett healthy, they probably were a top 10 team in the 5th region.
And he kept talking. He's also mentioned several times his words were if they get in shape.
If they get in shape.
As the year goes on, you tend to get in better shape.
Yep. But he does have Kayleana Richardson, who's a freshman, and she is a good-looking player.
Right.
And Burnett, in the second game when I saw her there against Greene County, she looked like she was getting more confident.
Right. It takes a while to come off that knee injury.
Yeah. So I would say that they, last year they shocked the world, winning the district, winning a first-round regional game and everything. They caught fire at the end of the season.
They just need to stay away from Greene. Greene's the best team in that district.
Yeah.
They can beat LaRue and they can beat Hart.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be the 4 seed versus – I'm just saying at the end of the year. They don't want to – if you want to get out of the district, I would not – in that district, I think Greene's a class.
Yeah. Right now they're in an 0-3 hole, so they need to get out of that.
Yes.
This is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, the Louisville Cardinals women's basketball team had a thrilling win over Kentucky on Sunday. It was Kentucky's only loss of the season so far, and the final was 61-59. Impressive win for Louisville. More impressive in some ways is the fact that we've got two pretty good women's basketball programs there.
Very good. And I think Western's good too.
Yeah, so
three
it's kind of like talking about football in a way. Our three
Mm-hmm.
women's basketball programs are outstanding, and the men's too, really.
Yeah, that was at Rupp, and Louisville came down. They were down 7 at half.
Yeah.
And came back, and UK missed a shot at the buzzer, 3 that could have won it.
Right.
But I think 14,000 people there, maybe 15,000.
That's a really good crowd.
Yes, it was. And it was ESPN game, too, 12 o'clock ESPN game on Sunday. So, a lot of eyeballs and things like that. So, yeah, there's Jeff Walls is a heck of a coach. And I think Matthew Mitchell, Kentucky's really good, too.
Yeah.
And they put on a really, really good show. And, of course, I think Louisville's, 7th or 8th in the nation. UK's 14th. And, of course, Louisville beat Oregon, the only team that's beat Oregon.
Yeah.
And Louisville's only loss was Ohio State.
Right.
So, the Cards are really good, and he's winning a little different. It's another sign of a good coach. They don't have that all-star, all-American guard like they had Asia Durr, but they're still winning and playing a pretty neat style. They don't shoot it great, but they shoot it well enough, and his teams are always will guard you and rebound.
That's the thing about Walls. If you look through the history of his coaching at Louisville, I think he's had what I would consider kind of 3 or 4 different phases of teams. Because he's had teams that could get up and down the floor. He's had teams that had outstanding inside presence. He's had teams that'll play outstanding defense. He's had outstanding scoring teams. It's kind of like whatever. He doesn't necessarily seem to recruit players to a system. He recruits the best players he can get, and then he builds a system for
I think
them.
it's fair. I think it's part of his genius, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
He's he's another one he just has a great basketball mind. And if you give him players, I think the one type of player that he wants hard-nosed kids.
Yeah.
Because he coaches them hard.
Right.
I've been to his practice. You better be able to take it because he's brutally honest.
Yeah.
And if you're the one, if you're somebody that backs away from that or you don't like that,
yeah,
you don't need to go there.
How long has he been at Louisville?
He came Patricia Barlow's senior year. So that would have been, I'm guessing, 2008. So
see, that's what I was
years.
Thinking. I knew
he coached her his senior year.
Okay,
senior year.
Yeah, I couldn't remember how many years he had been her coach. I just remember that he was not the coach that recruited her.
No.
And there was that change, and as I recall, though, her senior year turned out maybe to be her best year.
It was. She liked
Louisville.
She liked it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was feels like Patricia would fit the kind of personality he wants in a player.
Yeah, she can handle that. Yeah, that's right.
Meanwhile, you mentioned the WKU women. I mean, they're playing Sanford on Sunday. They're in the midst of a road trip. I think it's a 5-game road trip over the next week or so. And Sanford's not the toughest team they're playing on that road trip, but any road trip, I guess, can be daunting in some ways these days. No matter who you're playing.
Yeah, it is. It's winning on the road in college is a different animal.
Yeah,
I've said this before because you don't take your crowd with you.
Right.
So it's you against the world, and unfortunately, oftentimes in the women's game, it just depends on where you go. But you may go to, if you're playing at Louisville, you're going to play in front of 10,000 people.
Yeah.
But if you go to maybe Sanford or even some of the Conference USA teams, there may not be 500.
Right.
And oftentimes it's a different dynamic, too. You got to motivate yourself, but when there's only 400 and 500 there, you hear every word that's said.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different dynamic, but they have gotten off to a really good start. It's a little odd schedule in the sense that they'll go approximately 4 weeks without a home game.
Yeah.
And they still got to go to Purdue, which will be a very difficult game.
Right.
But this team is so much improved from last year. Whitney Creech is just an incredible jump in terms of her play.
Yeah.
Of course, Dee Givens had 41 in her previous game. I mean, she's a fantastic scorer, and they're getting Alexis Brewer is now back, and that will really, really even boost them even more. They've got I haven't seen all the teams this year, but them and Rice, in my opinion, it looks like are going to be the two top teams, and it's conceivable that if you don't win it, that you could get a bid to the NCAA. I mean, especially Rice because they've already been in the top 25. But how past history is, you better win your tournament.
Right. And on that note, we have the WKU men, which we'll talk about a little bit more in this next segment, but they've kind of hit a rough spot and talking about having to win their tournament. And they're going to have some players who have to figure out how to step up and lead, I think, at this point in time, because they don't have any choice left.
They don't, and it's going to really challenge their coaching staff too.
Yep.
Because it's a radical change when you're talking about a 7-footer in the middle.
Uh-huh.
And a 7-footer with NBA potential that you're counting on, and now you don't have him, and you're already 9 games in the year, and it's going to be a challenge to what direction that they want to go to in terms of playing style.
Yeah.
Do you just go small and just basically go 4 guards and put Carson Williams in the middle, or do you put your 2 backup post players in Horton and the Isaiah Cozart from Madison Central freshman? Do you just plug them in Bassett's spot and try to play that way? It's going to be really interesting. My gut tells me that Josh Anderson is going to go into the lineup.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to try to play faster. That's just my gut. But the one good thing that they've had, Western men, is they've had time off. Mm-hmm. And that's the best thing in the world when you're trying to figure out after an injury how you want to play, and if you're going to change, at least they've had some time to work on it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Louisville Cardinals, who shot up to number 1, lost the game, so the poll will be out. I'm not sure where they're going to be. I hadn't had a chance to look at it yet. And
they'll drop to probably. It was a bad loss because it's on national TV and it's ugly.
Yeah.
They'll go.
At least it wasn't to Pittsburgh, though.
No, but they'll go from 1 to they'll be 8, 9, 10, which is about where they should be. I mean, they bounced back and they destroyed Eastern.
Yeah.
But they were terrible this past week. I mean, it was. I sat there and watched it, and I couldn't hardly watch it because I kept thinking it almost looked like. And I've noticed this in the past with them. It almost looked like they were trying to play like Virginia, in the sense they do play a pack line defense like Virginia.
Yeah.
But I never remembered Louisville. Every time they got a defensive rebound against Texas, they walked it up the floor.
Yeah.
No fast breaks, walked it up, took shots at the end of the shot clock. I just thought it was terrible basketball how they played. Their point guard had 6 turnovers, didn't score. It was Perry. He looked like he played 2 years ago when he was really, or last year at times where he looked like he'd get frustrated and so forth. I thought he was over that.
Yeah.
It was a performance where it was very discouraging. It's not that they lost. It's how they played. They played lethargic. They played slow. They walked it up the floor, and they took bad shots. And it looked like to me that Louisville did not have like a plan B to go to.
Right.
Virginia works when you are ahead.
Yeah.
What made Virginia different last year is they actually had NBA players who could score.
Right.
To go along with that great defense, which they don't have this year at all.
No, yeah, as we've seen.
And Louisville got behind, and they had they had no answer in terms of speeding up tempo or anything like that, and that was discouraging. Chris Mack's a great coach, so maybe that's what he needed to see that. He needed to see – and it looked like to me the only adjustments that Louisville was making was substitutions. We're going to try somebody else, but we're not going to try to play any differently. There's no real pressure or anything like that until the very end when it's over. I was frustrated. I never like to see teams walk the ball off the field.
Yeah.
Floor. I don't like that style. And I kept there watching it over and over and over, and maybe I just hadn't paid attention enough this year. But that was all they did because they guarded people pretty good. They held them to 61 points.
Yeah. But
they only scored 50. And I really don't know why they did that unless that's just what they wanted to do.
I kind of got the impression last year, and maybe that's true in general, that sometimes Chris Mack has a response to his players when they decide they want to do what he doesn't want them to do or whatever, to be like, I guess I'll show you. Let's see what you can do if you do it your way. I mean, I'm not saying he necessarily does that, but there was a press conference last year where he kind of iterated that sometimes the players think they can do it their own way and it's going to work out fine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And he had a stretch of games where it seemed like he was like, well, let's see if you guys know what you're talking about. And they didn't, So maybe that was that game right there. You guys think you're so high and mighty. Let's see.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a coach trying to lose a game. I'm just saying sometimes I do believe coaches try to get messages
points.
to players.
I agree. I do agree with that. And Louisville is no way a number one team. No,
they were way too highly rated.
No, they're not number one. They just kind of evolved to number one just because everybody else was losing.
Yeah.
I think Kansas is the best team that I've seen.
Yeah.
And rightfully they should take over as number one. Louisville's they're top 10, but they're more bottom 10 than the top, 1, 2, or 3 in my opinion right now. They still have questions at guard. I'm not sold on their guard play. And that's a big issue. It's like having a good football team and going, I'm just not sold on the quarterback. That's an issue because I've yet to see a great team without great guards.
Yeah, it often shows up most prominently during the postseason.
Yes.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, I guess the NCAA heard us talking about Kenny Cooper last week because
I wish we had that power.
Yeah, for real, because we would have told them to come with a different decision, right?
We just got them to rule.
Yeah, we were like, basically
make
saying,
a decision.
Yeah,
they did.
Yeah, they did. They said, Kenny Cooper, you will not be playing this year, which is just, I don't know. I mean, you and I kind of have slightly differing opinions on the whole transfer thing. I'm fine with people having to sit out a year. If they transfer, I think that's fair enough on most parts. But then what happens is the NCAA, some people do and some people don't, and that's where you get into the why not.
It does seem quite arbitrary.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't make a lot of rhyme. I guess where it's confusing to people, it's confusing to me, is that some people become eligible In football and basketball, don't sit out any, and other people do not.
Jalen Hurts.
And other people don't, and it's confusing on exactly the standard sometimes.
Yeah, because, Jalen Hurts was not a grad transfer from Alabama to Oklahoma, right?
No. And Kenny Cooper is not a grad transfer.
Right.
I think there's part of the confusion that some of the Western people had. He is not a graduate.
That's right.
He just left Lipscomb, and his argument was his coach left.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think that is part of the. I don't think that's part of the rules in NCAA. If your coach leaves, then you can leave and instantly be eligible.
Yeah, and that's also one of those things that I think people would like to see adjusted to some degree. Now, if you just up and leave and the coach is still there and you expect to not have to sit out a year, then you should probably have to sit out a year. But that doesn't always play out either, does it? No, and that's the part.
That's
that's exactly right. Look, you're a qualified attorney, and you can look at this and say it doesn't really make a whole lot of legal sense in a lot of ways.
And one of the issues under the law too is being arbitrary is not good under the law. They don't like that at all because it looks like you play favorites when some people are allowed to get away with some, other people aren't. They'll talk about the law as arbitrary. They don't want it arbitrary.
Yeah. That's what we talked about this last week when it comes to the rules. People have to be willing to participate in the rules. The organization that enforces them has to enforce them even-handedly. It doesn't have to be fair or equal per se.
Right.
But it does have to appear to at least be even-handedly dealt with.
Consistent,
and that's kind of the deal. We just don't know. Like you talked about the quarterbacks and the on the 3 of the 4 playoff teams in college football are transfers. Look, Jalen Hurts was at Alabama last year. This year he's number 3 in the Heisman voting. By the way, Joe Burrow won.
Yes,
good for him.
Well done, well deserved.
Yep. And we don't know. How did he get to be eligible immediately at Oklahoma to play football this year? It doesn't make any sense. But Kenny Cooper moved 60 miles up the road, and he isn't. That's the problem these days with the NCAA and a lot of these organizations. There's the rhyme and reason. It's not
Life
there.
is a quandary.
It is indeed. Maybe we should just have a Merry Christmas about it all.
I wish the NCAA a Merry Christmas. Now, listen, they need it. Listen, we still have to have it. I keep telling people.
Yeah.
Don't wish for the demise of the NCAA tournament. NCAA. We still need a governing board.
Yes, you must have an organization to run this stuff.
Yeah,
as imperfect as it is, because otherwise there are not just haves and have-nots, there are nots.
That's correct.
You will have universities that cannot support any type of athletic programs that we've come to love.
That's correct.
Without at least some sort of rules organization offering a guiding hand, and thereby offering opportunities for postseason play, etc.
And that goes the same with the KHSAA.
Yes, it does. Well, Merry Christmas to you all. We will be back next week, one way or the other. This is the Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's in Glasgow. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.